Two.
Hi guys, Assalamu alaikum, Ukhanet, Namaste. I hope you guys are great. I want to talk today a little bit about the incarceration in Germany. Wherever I go, the young guys always are surrounding me to ask me, how was it? They expect me to say it was fantastic. It was quite funny, but quite serious at the same time. So when I do go to the mosque occasionally, I do have these young boys group around me and ask me like, so Uncle Zunaid, how was it? First of all, I hate the Uncle Zunaid part, but fine. They asked me how was it. It was, you know, at the time, it was horrible. It was very bad. And I'll get into it and, you know, explain it to you, and you'll get to hear about it in a whole bunch of series. But when I went to Germany, I went on a business meeting with my two young sons. And it was good. We were in a private plane. We landed in Munich. I was having a meeting with some gentleman, a friend of mine from Mansouri. It's a company that does sports car, what do they call it, kits and so on. I'm sure some of you know it. I was intending to buy half of his business, and we were there to conclude the deal. Everyone was really excited. Anyway, a day and a half later, I made my way to the airport, and I went to the immigration guy. I gave him a passport, and he says to me, he looked at me, he looked at the computer, he looked at me again, and he said, you go jail. I said, what? And he said, you go jail. You know, in a bit sorry, I'm not doing the German accent right now, but it wasn't nice. And I said, stop joking. We're in late, you know, we need to go. And the next thing, I had people putting me down on the ground, putting some cuffs onto me, and my little boys were watching. So that was a bit sad for me. But it was worse for them because, you know, I do remember my little guy, at that stage he was about 8 years old. He asked the police officer, the two of them, he said, can they go with me to jail, which is just, now that Father's Day is coming and so on. It was very touching for me to see young kids have that type of affinity for their dad, you know. It's sad. But anyway, enough of the serious stuff. They took me they incarcerated me, and they took me to a holding cell. Believe it or not, it was underground. And I'd snuck my phone into the jail cell with me. The only bad part about this is the battery was running down. Man, I made so many bloody phone calls. And sooner, you know, when it hits the 1 bar, and you know now you need to think about your options, that's the thing that hit me. I was a bit underground. There was a small signal. And I phoned my wife. I said, listen, you better send backup and help. My accountant was with me, Salim, and he was calling the whole world frantically. And in the morning, after a very restless night, and the battery went down, sure, it's an unbearable feeling. Here you are, this businessman, doing things, going places, trying to do deals, and all of a sudden it all comes to a dead end. Everything stops in that moment, your entire life. It's very difficult to explain because everything gets taken away from you in an instant. And this is proof about your belief system and how you believe in Almighty and how you can believe in yourself. The test was being able to believe in myself. But believing in myself meant that I need to be able to believe in the Almighty, and I need to know what my purpose is. So this road was a 6-month, 100 and odd days incarcerated. I think it was 160 or 170 days in solitary confinement. Because when I got arrested, I was inappropriately arrested and incorrectly. It was a complete lie, a fabrication. Someone created a warrant of arrest for me in Russia. You guys heard about it. And I found myself pretty much, and I want to use the F word, but buggered. So there I was sitting in this holding cell. Came out of the cell this morning. I thought, I'm going to be out of here. I'm Moti, man. Everything's going to be just fine. I got out there. I went to a court proceeding. I was just taken. I didn't have an attorney. I tried to get one. The people tried to get one for me. And I ended up in a place called, I can't remember the name, but it was a small town near the airport. And the judge, everyone was speaking German, and everything sounded rough. You know, the Germans sound quite aggressive when they talk. And at the end, the whole proceeding took place, and the lady said, okay. And I said, no, it's not okay. What have you guys been saying? And she asked me in a very feeble, or should I say very limited English way, you understand English? And I said, yes. Do you? She said, yes. I said, then can you just help me understand what you've been saying? She said, no, we need a translator. So we got a translator in there. She got one in, and they started to explain to me that they can't set me free because I'm the subject matter of a Interpol red notice warrant. Obviously, I'd realized this at the airport already, that it was like a bad bloody movie, man. It was just like you wake up at night and you're in a big sweat, and then you open your eyes, but you're in your room and everything's fine. Only this time, I was not in my room. I was living this nightmare. Anyway, so they took me away. Eventually, after she pronounced that I have no liberty and freedom, she said, alles gut, everything will be good. Those were the last words I heard in court. And off I went into this vehicle with 3 or 4 police officers, and they took me to a prison called Landsberg. And I must say, when I got there, it looked like new and modern and clean. And initially, my heart was pumping, I was apprehensive, but I was just trying to be brave for my kids and my family, In my mind, I was programming my mind to say, don't worry, it's a weekend now, we're gonna be fine. And as I got into the prison, they took me to this place where you have to strip down, and they do these very unique searches that I'm sure you guys have seen in movies. It's bloody true. Very embarrassing. Anyway, I try to sort of hold on to this little phone of mine in one way or the other, but when you have nothing on and you're turning around and bending over and doing all of that stuff, you can't really hang on to that phone, mate. You got to hand everything in. So I handed all the stuff in, and then you have to go for a specific antiseptic type of shower. You get given very small shoes in my case and very big clothes. And they then take you to this place, which to me looked like a very cheap 2-star retreat. It wasn't bad at Landsberg. It had big windows, they gave you a key to your door, but you were locked up amongst other guys. It felt kind of all right. Immediately I said, look, I need to write about this before I forget. So I asked for some paper and some writing material, and we started writing everything that happened. At 9:42, this happened. At 10:12, I was recording events because I was so angry and I didn't want to forget in the haste of things. So I went through that process. The day one passed, I met some Albanians and some Algerians and so on, some Muslim people. Interestingly enough, guys, in the German prisons, I found that there were a large majority of the prisoners, and when I say large, probably at least 30-40% of the prisoners were Muslim. So they spoke very nicely to one another from that perspective. Islam was very rife in the prison. It almost felt like you were in some Middle Eastern country, but with some very heavy machinery called German prison wardens walking around. The German prison wardens are very electronic, unemotional. And the first time that I had an intervention with one of them was one that spoke English. And the first thing he said to me, I asked him, what are we going to do here, at the prison? And the guy said, here we dehumanize you. And I was like, geez, I haven't heard that word before. But later on, in my stay there, I started to understand what that meant. And he was very serious, I think. I was just not taking him seriously. Anyway, I was in Landsberg. And in the middle of the night, on the second night, I'll remember, I can't remember where it was, Sunday now, but I thought to myself, listen, you know what, if I'm going to be here a day or two, maybe a couple of days, let me just decide to get fit, like in the movies, and you see Rocky and all of these movies where the guys go to jail. And I took my little vest, and I had these shorts, jocks on, and I started doing these push-ups and sit-ups and all of these things, and in my mind I was, preparing myself for getting out of there now. And the food, it wasn't good. I don't want to elaborate on it wasn't good, but it just was horrible. But I think the sit-ups and the push-ups and pull-ups and all of these type of things, and I was like, in my mind, I saw myself having this amazing physique when I came out of jail, and sort of resting my mind and my body and getting in touch with myself again. Man, after a week of this and getting to know the guys, it looked like things were going to be for the long term. I met my attorneys the next week. They came to see me. They said, listen, don't worry. My friend Salim, he was with me. He told me, Moti, don't worry. Just go, just relax a little bit. And in a day or two, you're going to be out. And I was still sort of buying into that whole concept. And 1 week passed, and I realized, oh man, my stomach was sore, my biceps and so on was sore, but my mind was really, really sore, and my brain was sore because I wasn't going anywhere. I could never phone. I didn't have any comms. They didn't allow me to see my family. It was a bit of a distance away from München, this particular facility. And then all of a sudden, I got a letter, and it was in German. And I looked at the letter, and I didn't understand it, and I asked one of the inmates to read it to me and explain it to me. And he said, he read it. I said, no, oh, very bad. I said, what's the problem? He says, now you go to another prison. So I said, okay, this is good, near my family. He says, yeah, but very bad prison, this one. And I said, like, what do you mean? He says, you see, Landshut is good, it's very nice, but another prison is very bad. So I thought, nah, it can't be. You know, I'm here, I'm cool. Things seem to be clean. You clean your room every day. There's a bathroom there. It's separated. You actually got a door to the bathroom. And so it looked decent, you know, where I was in Landshut. And he said to me I was going to go to Munich at the main prison there. And the main prison's name was, I'm trying to remember, it was Stadelheim. The main prison's name was Stadelheim. It was a prison built in the late 1800s, in the turn of the century, in the 1900s. And it was built in the German occupation at the time of just before World War I. Hitler actually spent some time in that prison. I was in B3, and he was also within the B block, but further underground. They took me there. It was ridiculous. They took me there like a seriously very important criminal. There was a bus. They came to fetch me. They tied your feet up and your hands and so on. And you get into this bus. It's got maybe about 5 or 6 very heavily armed guys escorted by police. Man, this was just not happening. I was like, what the hell? Here I am, just a businessman conducting my affairs, and I'm now in this massive bus that's going from Landshut to Munich, Stadelheim. As you get to Stadelheim, guys, listen, I don't know how tall those walls are in the Netherlands, man, but these walls were just massive. When you just arrive there, they're gray, the climate is gray, you arrive there, a very hostile circumstances. They once again take all your clothes off, do that whole checking, bend over nonsense, and they reassess you, check your height, look in your mouth, make sure you're not carrying anything untoward. And I said to the guy, look, you know, I'm not a big guy, you know, but can I get just the right size of t-shirt or whatever clothes? And he gave me a triple XL top with a tiny trousers and a massive shoe. And I said to him, bro, like, you know what? Then he took my shoes away. He said, you don't wish shoes, don't take. I was like, okay, give me the shoes from the clown. You know, it was maybe a size 10 or 11 or 12, something ridiculous. Anyway, I put this stuff on, went in, and then it's amazing because they start preparing you for jail life almost. So they send you to like a section where you got to share a room with someone. It's the same size, it's about 5 square meters. And you got to share this room with someone. The toilet's just open, so you can see what he's doing, he can see what you're doing. But I mean, that's the last of your concerns at this point in time. You're worried about your children, your business, your parents. You worry just about everything because you can. And you have so much time to think about it that everything is a big thing, you know. Anyway, so there I am, and they come once a day to give you this big bowl of something. A lot of beans. There was a lot of pig there. And you know, we're Muslims and we don't sort of eat pig and pork, sorry. And it was quite humiliating. They come and put the pig in front of you, the pig sausages and all of that. The other inmates obviously loved that. Most of them, from what I could see. I saw a lot of color in prison. There was, between the Muslims and the blacks, people that were there, it could have been at least 50, maybe 60% of the population. And I found that the way they treated you in jail, because you were not German or you were not an Aryan type of person, was not good. You could see the division in how the wardens treated blacks and Muslims vis-a-vis the white guys. But be it as it may, it was the last of my problems, actually. I'm thinking about it in hindsight. So there we were sharing a room with this guy. I can't even remember his name. I don't even remember why he was there. And you either sleep on top or at the bottom. And you choose, the first guy who comes in the room chooses, and that's how it works, and then that's how it is. Then you go to the loo, and the place is quite confined. You know, it's interesting when you need to go. And but after a while, you just lose that inhibition. It's like, hey, I need to do this. Just deal with it. Your roommate, you know. And you can see your roommate's face, or when he's gone to the loo, he could feel from me that I wasn't really happy. But it is what it is. It's bunking together. But it was important because I had someone to actually talk to. And the first thing I asked is, why are you here? And how do we get out of here? And what did you do? And so on. And he spoke English. So it was just fantastic for me. So you spend about a week there. It's an introduction to the entire prison and so on. And they let you walk around for an hour and so on. So you get to do a bit of training outside. And it is like a little bit like in the movies, because as soon as you get out, these guys take their tops off and they start doing these curl-ups and all of these things. And you're wondering, like, hey, you know, I should not take my shirt off now. The six-pack is not there. The six-pack of donuts is pretty much there. But you're in jail, so you're going to fix all of that because you have time. And so when you're outside, you also become part of a bit of a clique. You'll find in jail, there's all these cliques all over, all these groups of people that hang together. And I don't know why it is, but it just is that way. But the white guys are with the white guys, the black guys are with the black guys, the Muslims are... It's not like in those American movies and all of that, but there is some similarity there. And everybody just wants to talk when they come out for that hour. And all you actually just want to do is just have space in your head and just to walk, because you need to, you know, get your body moving. The other one thing in jail, which is very bad, is that you need to get your blood going. Because if you don't, and you're like me, you have this type 2 diabetes, it can become a bit of a problem. So you need to do a bit of training, you need to keep your blood going, and you need to get tired. And the only way to get tired is to do the 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You can just walk the whole day and pray. So I put my faith back into Almighty, and I said, look, my only route out of here, it seems, is with your help. And I started making sure I read the Quran again and come in touch with the Quran and make sure that I start revising the Quran, because I was, as a young boy, becoming a Hafiz al-Quran, and I had forgotten majority of what I learned, and I started doing that to keep my sanity. And I started writing a lot of letters. Jeez, I mean, I remember this index finger of mine was so bent out by the time I left jail, man. I had written so many pages, hundreds of pages of stuff to my family, to my children. I used to write them tests, mathematics tests for them, and check it the next day when the attorneys used to come and see me, just to keep the communication going, make sure that they know I'm there, that I love them. I draw them pictures. I make them jets, you know, because I have all the bloody time in the world. I'm worried about my business now. You know, it's like playing chess blindfolded with 3 pieces on the table versus the rest of the world. That was very hard. I think I'm going to break there.
No, I like it. Do you want to check?
Sure. Sure.
No, I like it. Continue.
So I had these attorney visits every day. It cost an absolute fortune. No one was really listening to me, not because of any other reason. They didn't speak much English, first of all, and secondly, they didn't even care. So they put me into B3, which was the B block, 3rd floor. And then now you're alone, you're by yourself. They serve you tea in the morning at 6 o'clock. They come to your cell about 5:30, 6 o'clock. They open up the hatchet like this. They take a, what do they call this, a flashlight. And then they flashlight you. Moti, you alive? Okay. Then they close it. Just the weirdest thing the first day I was there. Why would someone ask me if I'm alive? I'm going to be alive. I'm going to make it through this. But it breaks your mind when the guy opens the door. He says, hey, Moti, you're alive? Good. It means that sometimes when they open the hatch, like, people are not alive. And within the first week or two, I experienced something ridiculous down there. One of the people on the B3 floor had hung himself in a cell next door to me. He was a young father. I didn't know him really much, but he had committed suicide by hanging himself on the door handle. And you know, it was time to go out, and his door was just jammed, and the police were trying to pull it, and as they pulled it out, this man came out with a big face, blue, dark in color. It was a day old plus, or thereabout, and he was just dead with his eyes popping out. It was just an awful scene for me. And then you had to help the police just take him off the wire or the peril he used. He used it. He made a string out of some materials and hung himself. But to me, it just dawned on me at that time that, geez, that guy that opened the door, he was serious, man. He was looking for dead people, not people that were as alive. Anyway, so that shocked me a bit because it was a bit of a reality check. You're not in jail because you got a timeline to come out. And I think the thing that drives you completely mad is that you don't know the end date and the plan. So when you don't know the end date, you can't anticipate anything. You can't plan for anything. And I was looking at serving a sentence in Russia in absentia. I received a sentence in absentia, not being part of the court proceedings in Russia. I think it was 20 years or something like that. And when I looked at this guy, I thought, geez, I'm about 45 now, or 44. When I come out, my children are going to be so old. And where will I be? Will everyone be there? Will anything be there? So it was that uncertainty that drove you more mad than anything, not knowing the unknown. And it's always the unknown that drives people mad. You know, often of the time when you ask yourself what it is that annoys you the most, or me, is not knowing, the unknown. But when you have faith, it's irrelevant, because then you have to place your entire faith into the Almighty and believe that things will turn out fine, because you're not understanding the purpose of the difficulty you're going through. There's always good to everything, trust me. After spending some time down there, that too, in my own way, I see as a positive thing. It was an opportunity for me to pause, take stock, look at what's valuable, understand what's the most important things to me, and make those a priority for me going forward. Because often of the case, you'll find yourself taking for granted the most important things in the world, the most important people in the world, the most important relationships, and the most important aspects of what the Almighty and the universe has given you without any cost. The simple idea of just walking out and breathing, or just talking to the next man, or just walking, or just not being surrounded by walls. The ability to breathe fresh air, or should I say freedom air as I called it, because when you're in there, man, it's so weird. Even the air wants to sort of like kill you. You can't breathe the air in. So I went in summer, it was fantastic, it was really warm, and man, as the time was passing, I noticed that the leaves were falling. I remember picking up a leaf and sending it to my daughter in an envelope, just to remind her. It was a beautiful leaf of a big, I'm not sure what tree it was, but it was very beautiful, and I sent it to her. But at that time when I sent it to her, I realized, hey, the season's changing now. It's getting a bit cooler. And it was a concern to me, you know, when you write on the wall, because everyone does it. When you get in there, the first thing you do is you want to clean the place up for days, especially the toilet. Jesus, I must have spent at least 5 or 10 days just cleaning the toilet. It was filthy. And the taps and the floor, and you used to wear other people's underwear every day. They just come and give you underwear and T-shirts that belong to other people every day. And I stopped wearing underwear, which is just ridiculous. And but you adjust as a human being. You adjust to your circumstances. And you must always find yourself in a way that allows you the ability to just adjust to your circumstances, however good or bad they are. It's not difficult adjusting to living in a 5-star hotel, I guess, you know. But it does take some adjustment coming from the hotel and going back to the -5-star, you know. So anyway, you start trying to build friendships, because you want to talk to people you're not allowed to. You get an hour's intervention. And it's tough out there because you're just on your own. And I think the one thing I learned there is how to be comfortable in my own skin and how to really become my own sort of best friend in a way, because it's all I had there. It was the Almighty and me. It was so crazy that you actually, at some point, without really knowing, you start talking to yourself. You just don't know you're talking to yourself. You're walking around in your 1, 2, 3s, 1, 2, 3s, and all of a sudden you're going like, and I said, do this, and don't do that, and when I get out, I'll do this. And before you know it, you're talking to subconsciously someone that's there, and before you know it, you're actually speaking to yourself, and you're speaking to God, and you're trying to create that link that you so desperately need with someone or something. And you start making promises to yourself. When I get back, I'm never going to do this. I'll never do this. It's all lies. I must just tell you, the sooner you get back, you start your nonsense all over again. Most people do. You make some changes. Obviously, you have to make some changes. But you had this situation where the toilet was in your room, and 1, 2, and you were at the toilet, and there was a small basin. And as I said, the times were changing. The temperature went from very warm to kind of windy. And then winter hit it. It was like minus 20 degrees in there. I'm not exaggerating. You open the tap and literally in a few seconds you get slush coming out. And you got to wash there in your chamber, in your cell. You got to keep yourself clean. You don't have much. I didn't have a lot of money. But you have got €50 a month eventually after a month or two. Once they accept that you're going to be there for a while. That's a very bad thing. That acceptance drove me completely mad. You need to make acceptance with whatever your situation is. Until you make that acceptance, you're going nowhere. Because it means you're not embracing your current situation, whether it's good or bad. And I say this because most entrepreneurs suffer the same problem. The moment they hit a bad patch, they refuse to accept what the problem is. They refuse to understand what's causing that problem. They refuse to deal with the problem because they want to block it all out. That's no way of dealing with things. You got to find and understand what's caused the output. Remember that every single output that's there in your life is a direct result of your input. So you got to go back, look at your input, accept that that input may be wrong, that has given you the output that you don't want or that hasn't been desired. And then once you make the acceptance, it's the first step, being able to go forward and find another input that possibly give you a better output. A lot of inputs and outputs there, but I hope you got it. So then I started writing all these bloody long books. And I mean long, and you know, the moment you get locked up on a Friday, it's the 3-day lockdown. So you see absolutely nothing for 3 days. And you'll see when you write, as you get to Saturday, you're writing more aggressively. By Sunday, you're pushing that pencil deep into that paper, man, where you take the paper and then you can feel underneath, like if you were blind, you could feel like a braille type of feel behind it, you know. Because you're so angry, you're so upset, you're so annoyed, because you've been deprived of what ordinarily is for free, your freedom. So by the time Monday comes, you can't wait. And I used to do an amazing thing on my wall. As I said, I cleaned it. I even wanted to paint it, but they don't give you paint because apparently you can kill yourself with it. So you paint the walls, you clean the walls rather, you scrub them, and eventually the place is habitable. And then you start writing on the walls. It's unbelievable. You start drawing stuff, you start behaving like a normal prisoner now. And you start asking yourself, like, what the hell, man? I'm not like these guys. I'm different. It all starts off with clean walls, man. By the time you leave, my wall was so checkered out and it had so many paintings and so many things on it. I was so surprised. It was the last good look I had at it. I seen all of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 1. That was 1 week. I was hoping I'll never have to scratch that side thing more than once. But man, it was many, many weeks. The wall was getting full. I was getting scared. And at some point, I just embraced it. And I said, listen, dear Almighty, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I put my complete faith and trust in you now for the first time. Because being a Muslim and being a person who wants to have faith, you need to put that 100% in. It's not 99.9, it's just 100%. And when you put your faith and trust into your Creator and the universe, hopefully you have enough faith within yourself to make sure that is a positive outcome. So you need to be, I know this sounds crazy now, but you need to find yourself in a place where you almost become unaffected by the outcome. And I know this sounds completely impossible, but until you do that, you're going nowhere. When you accept your circumstance, embrace it, and stop worrying about the outcome, you start getting somewhere. The moment you start worrying about the outcome, you do these diagrams and these pie charts and the outcome. But if I go to court, then this happens. If I lose here, this will happen. If I gain there. I went to the Constitutional Court, called the Bundesverfassungsgericht, 3 times. And on all 3 times, it was the appellate, or should I say, Constitutional Court in Germany. And on all 3 times, they said I wasn't sick enough and I wasn't old enough to get their ear and attention. I wrote to all my friends. I wrote to even people that were not my friends to say, can you help me? Throw me a line. Come and save me. And then I remembered a story about a man in Islam. He was a really devout believer. I'm sorry to digress, but you may like the story. And he was in a boat, in a ship, and the ship sunk. And he was there, and he was very religious, so-called religious. And he was swimming around, and a guy came with the boat, threw him one of those life jacket things. He didn't take it. He came by to fetch him with a boat. He needed to hold onto the boat. He said no. Helicopter came. He said no. And the guy said, what are you doing? Well, the helicopter asked him, what are you doing? And he said, no, I'm waiting God Almighty. I trust in Him. I believe in Him 1,000,000%. And He's coming to save me. And he died. And when he pitched up at the pearly gates, and he had an intervention with Almighty, he said, hey, what's up, man? You know, I believed in you completely. I was completely committed and dedicated. I'd done everything. And now, what do you have to say to the Almighty? God said, listen, mate, I sent you a life jacket. I sent you a boat. I sent you a helicopter. You didn't take either of it. What did you want me to do? And the point is that you need to play a role in your success or failure. And so I only realized that later in my incarceration, that it was really all up to me and what I believed in and how I was going to put my faith and trust into myself and ultimately into the Almighty and have a purpose. It gave me the defining ability to know who I am, to meet Zunaid. And there was a lot of things that I had not thought about in the time that I wasn't in jail. There's just so many things you have that you can't actually bring conclusion to in a normal day or week or month or year, because you're always obstructed, you always have a diversion, or you have someone interrupting your thought, your trend, your thinking, your plans, so that you can't really reach conclusion on a lot of things. And then all of a sudden you have all this time in the world to answer all the questions you've been asking yourself. And a lot of people like to call that a bit of soul searching, but actually it's just being honest with yourself and having that moment of being able to sit and talk to yourself openly about how you really feel, who you really are, what makes you scared, what makes you happy. And there were so many things I had discussions with myself about, to the point where I made a pact with myself, and we'll talk about that later on. But when I was in there, I just wrote to everybody, anyone, people I knew, people I didn't know, and I was looking for some sort of guidance, but I was also looking for help. So I did write to my family a lot, every day, 2 times, 3 times a day, lunchtime. It's unbelievable. I would send a whole bunch of letters by lunchtime. They would get out. And then immediately I used to prepare for the next day for writing new letters and reading their letters. It was almost like a very hungry person wanting to eat. But these letters were like feeding my soul, you know, feeding me up and giving me hope all the time. Pictures that my children used to send me in the jail, me sending them pictures, as I said, making them little jets to fly, giving them mathematical quizzes so I could mark it the next day and get them more current. My children and my wife, they stayed in Germany throughout that period of time, which is amazing. But very hard on them too. So being incarcerated wasn't just troublesome and hard for me, it was just for my family. And my wife was pregnant. I do remember when my son was born. You may ask yourself how many. I told you guys I have lots of children. But he was born, and the way I found out he was born, the guy came to my cell. He knocked at the door. He opened the hatch and said, Moti! I said, yes. He said, you have child. And he closed the hatch. I was like, okay. Thank you. And a few days later, or a day or two later, I got a picture of my son. So, you know, the opportunities that I did have to enjoy the birth of my other children just hit me in my face at that time. Because it was me taking for granted the important things and me realizing that I should pay more attention to what we call the little things, which are the important things. So when I wrote to a few presidents. I wrote to Lord Peter Hain. He used to write to me, Peter Hain. He used to say, "Dear comrade," like he was talking about, like the struggle in his letters. It felt so empowering that I was part of his struggle in his head. It was amazing. He was a good friend to have. I wrote to the president of Zimbabwe, reached out, said, "Uncle, please assist me if you can." I wrote to our president of the Republic of South Africa, to him. I didn't get any response, obviously. I did write to a lot of other people looking for help anywhere and everywhere I could find it. And there were some great people that came to see me in jail, all the way from South Africa and all over the place. When they got an opportunity to see me, they did come and see me and spend half an hour with me, tell me that they were praying for me, that they were hoping everything goes well, etc. And it was very disenfranchising for me because I was stuck and I could do nothing being inside of there with no comms. And I was saying no comms, but I want to tell you guys later on about these little phones that I snuck into the jail that got me into so much trouble. You're going to love it. I tell you, I used to hide the little phone that my wife sent me. I used to take the phone apart and put the battery somewhere else and take the little phone and stick it into a jar of peanut butter after covering it in some plastic so that I could get some comms out. But those Germans were clever, man. They had a triangulation tracking device because they could see there was cellular phone signal coming out of the jail, and they were after me, and they were checking out when I was on the phone. I used to put a little bit of coffee just in front of my door. Just as I walked to my door, just drop coffee along the way, because at night it was so dark, but then I could hear if somebody came near my door, and I could listen to the coffee that was crackling on their feet. So I know they're there or they're not there. And one night when I lost my first phone, I was sitting on the loo, and I could hear this coffee thing, but I was on the phone trying to speak to my family and to my business colleagues and so on, and I could hear that something wasn't right. And in seconds, I'd taken the phone and stuck it down into the, what do they call it, the loo, and I was still on the loo sitting there, and the guy came in. Like within seconds, it was just like 2 seconds, and he was in the room already. And he said, "Handy." In Germany they call cell phones handy. I also found that weird, handy. But they used, as if to say, "Give me your cell phone." He says, "Handy." And I was like, "No handy here." And he was taking me off the toilet with my bum still unwiped. And then he looked at the toilet and he went, "Ah!" And he flushed the toilet. I was like, thank God you flushed the toilet, because the phone went with it. And then he searched my room, tore my bed up, threw everything upside down, and he found nothing. And I stood there naked while they searched you and all of that. So that was the first time I lost my phone. But I don't want to digress. I'll get back to those interesting stories. What I want to tell you is that the issue that relates to...
No record. No record.
No?
You don't have a
You
record.
don't have a criminal record.
Oh.
Criminal.
Just while we're checking, I think it's important for me to mention that I do not have any criminal record at all. I've never been prosecuted, and I've never been issued a sentence, other than the one in Russia in absentia. I was vindicated. The Interpol explained very carefully what happened. It was inappropriate of the Russian authorities to put onto Interpol this red notice, which was a fake charge. They quickly realized that it was a fake charge, even when I got arrested. And within 2 hours, they informed the German authorities that it was a farce and a fraudulent notice of intention in terms of the red notice. They obviously didn't listen, because Germany and Russia had a country-to-country arrangement, and they decided not to listen to Interpol. Interpol vindicated me. They were really, really, in their own way, tried their best to put me in a position where I was no longer incarcerated. There was a lot of back and forth with the Secretary General and so on. And eventually, when I was released, I received a very nice letter from them, which I appreciated. The German authorities, on the other hand, were just ridiculous. It's just mad. I got imprisoned in a country called Germany, but in an area called Bavaria. And Bavaria is the only country, or the only, should I say, state within the German states that does not give you bail, called Caution. I'll never forget that term, Caution. It's the term for English bail. I was just asking, can I just get bail? Can I go out? We can sort this out. In Bavaria, you don't get bail when you're not a German citizen. So I was stuck in a country with no chance of getting bail, and you had to sit until the matter was fully ventilated. But I do not have any criminal record at all, both internationally and in South Africa. Like our wonderful media like to portray and create innuendos again. There's nothing like that. I have a police clearance in the UK, in South Africa, all over the world, with Interpol more particularly. So I just thought I'd mention that.